Carolyn Doobie here. What's the play for today? Well, today it's all about rubber stamps and a gel press plate. Now, with this, you're going to see how I use a rubber stamp to add a layer to a print that I don't like to turn it into one I love. You're going to see the practical reasons why stamps and gel plates were meant to go with each other, and I'm going to show you an easy way to clean a stamp after you've used it with paint. I'm going to start with talking here about the cleanup because I'll prep this before I start playing. What I've got here are some paper towels. I've got about 4 of them here stacked on top of each other. And then I just put a bunch of water on it so that this thing is really squishy and juicy. But it's not so much water that when I put the stamp on it that it's going to be soaking the entire stamp, meaning the back side of it, so where the foam cushion is, or if you're doing this with a wood-mounted stamp, it'll keep any of that water from getting on there too. But we'll see how that works all together at the end. But I do prep it before I begin. I'm using the 8x10 gel press plate here, and I've just put some white Amsterdam paint on here. I'm putting an even coat of it all over it. This is going to act as my ink pad. Now I could stamp on plain paper, but instead I'm going to pick some gel prints that I've made. Some of them I like, some of them I don't, some of them just need another layer, and I'm actually going to stamp onto that. So I'm going to press the entire stamp here into that white paint, and I'm going to take a peek and see how well I did at that. Can you see down on the bottom left down there? Yeah, I didn't push down there, so oddly enough, there's no paint there. So I'm simply going to put it back on, just like this was an ink pad. Once I've got that layer of paint all over it, then I'm going to decide where I want it, and I'm going to push it down. Now, I know that there are spots that I might not push down very hard on, so that's why I'm going to go over this 2 or 3 times to make sure that I've got that thing touching the paper everywhere. That stamp is touching the paper so that I get that impression to transfer. And when I want to stamp in white, I have found nothing beats using paint for getting that very opaque white on there that really stands out and pops. Now there's a print that I've seen recently that's the one I want to stamp on, but apparently it's not in the stack. So I'm going to go look for it in just a moment here. But before I do, I'm going to get my ink pad ready again. I'm just going to brayer right on top of it, smooth out that paint, so it's nice and fresh for when I take that Carabelle Studio stamp and put it in there to pick up some of that white paint. One of the reasons why I love using a gel plate as my ink pad when I'm using a large stamp like this is it allows me to easily get that color uniformly over the whole thing. And that means when I stamp it, I've got that complete image no matter how big the stamp is. And I have to say, Carabelle Studio has some fantastically, amazingly wonderful large stamps with so many fun patterns. You should check them all out if you like rubber stamping. Now on the last print, I stamped it once on the print and I stopped. For this one, I'm going to fill the entire page with parts of this stamp. So I'm going to smooth out my ink pad here. I'm going to load this thing up with paint, and then I'm simply going to put it down over part of it. Notice how I'm kind of holding the stamp up? I don't have to stamp the whole thing. That's one of the great things that I love about cling mounted stamps is you can just use pieces and parts of it. And that's all I'm doing here is just using parts to fill in this entire page to create that background. So as you're adding a layer onto your prints, you can cover the whole thing or just stamp on part of that print. Well, now that I'm done with the white paint, I'm going to clean the stamp. And all I'm going to do is pop it onto those paper towels. I pushed it down. And this is allowing that moisture, that water, to be right there where the paint is and just there. Now I've still got white paint on the plate, so I'm going to take one of my brayer cleanup papers and I'm going to take a print with it. None of the paint ever has to be wasted. It can be used to create a layer. And so now I've got some wonderfully subtle and mysterious looking windows in parts of this print. Well, now you've seen it with white paint, let's do this with black paint. And I'm going to use the exact same stamp that I had. However, it's got a bunch of white paint on it, right? So I'm going to clean that stamp off. As I lift it off of here, you can see all the white paint that was on the paper towel there. Yep, that's because it was getting nice and wet and helping pull that paint off. Now this is just a paper towel and I'm wiping off the paint and now it's ready to go. The important thing when I'm wiping off a color is that it's dry. If you've got a bunch of water on it, when you put it in the next color, that does make things a bit runny. And I want to get a nice, crisp image with all the wonderful details here on this Carabelle stamp. I'm starting out by getting my ink pad ready here with whatever color of paint I want. Love that we have that freedom and flexibility with this. I'm going to go for black for the look that I want, but of course you can use any color that you want. Now the print that I'm going to be adding this onto is this one that I made using a wood graining tool on the gel plate. And I have a video showing you how to do that, and I'll have a link down below for you so you can check that out anytime you want. So any idea why I put that stamp back down in the paint? Well, if you thought because I wasn't sure I had it fully covered and I wanted to be sure, you are absolutely right. So I just simply put it on there again to make sure I had that black paint. And I'm about to be in a quandary with this because my plan was to stamp it once, but once I saw it on there, I realized I think I want to cover the entire thing. I love how this stamp looks on this background. So yeah, I'm going to go for it. I am going to stamp this all around it and fill the entire page in. Now you might be wondering how I'm going to get this to line up precisely because with black paint, you can see the pattern on this more than you could when I was doing this with white paint. And well, I'm not going to work that hard to do it. I'm just going to eyeball it, put it right next to it, and then stamp it right there. Before I had a gel plate, what I would do when I used paint with stamps is I would try and brayer the paint on the stamp or put a thin layer of it. And what I found is a lot of times I would get a goopy look. It was hard to get details out of a stamp, but using that gel press plate as the ink pad here, that is what's allowing me to get that thin layer on there. When having that thin layer of paint, that is what allows you to get that crisp image and all those details to show. Another thing that I really appreciate about using the gel press plate as my ink pad for this is that none of the paint has to be wasted. Because once I'm all done with the stamp, you bet I'm going to take a print of whatever's on that plate. If I love it just as it is, fantastic. If not, it becomes a layer that builds up on another print. And speaking of that, let's do that now. I'm going to grab one of my existing gel prints here, and I'm simply going to put it right on top. Now, when you've got a cleanup print like this, when you've been using it as the ink pad, what you tend to get are pieces and fragments and parts of the stamped image. And so that creates this wonderful, mysterious kind of layer onto your print. And this is just one of the many ways you can use a gel press plate. If you're looking for more ideas, more inspiration, be sure to hit that subscribe button. That way you'll know as soon as Gel Press has a new video out. All right, so here is the mysterious kind of look. You can see how you can see the windows there. You've got some colors peeking through from behind the black. It's just got a lot of mystery to it. I love prints like this. Now, of course, I also love these where you can clearly see the image. Yeah, pretty much. I love them all. All right, let's talk a little bit more about cleaning that stamp. It is paint on there, and you do want to clean it off before it dries. So I'm just pressing it there into those wet paper towels, and I'm going to leave it there for a couple of minutes. Now, of course, I could leave it there for 5 minutes. I could leave it there for an hour. I could leave it overnight. As long as the paper towels are wet, you are fine to leave it there. As I push on this, you can see how that black that is coming from underneath it, that is the paper towel doing the work for us of cleaning that stamp. Now, if you want to get into the nooks and crannies, you can use something like an old toothbrush if you want to really scrub it and get it super clean. Of course, once you've used a toothbrush for this, you shouldn't brush your teeth with it ever again. If you feel like it needs more time to soak, you put it back in there and let it soak longer. If you feel like all the paint's come off of it, then you simply take a paper towel and wipe it all off. All of the prints that I've got here, I'm loving how these are looking. But it wasn't the case before I started. There is one of these, and I'm not going to tell you which one of these colorful ones I really didn't like that much. But by adding a little bit of stamping to it, I am falling in love with it. So if you've ever got a print that you're not completely in love with, grab your gel press plate, grab a rubber stamp, and add a layer that way. Thanks so much for joining me for today's play. If you've been enjoying this video, I'd so appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. And of course, if you want to see more gel press videos, hit that subscribe button. That way you'll know as soon as they've got a new one out. Thanks so much for letting me be a part of your colorful journey.